Welcome to today's deep dive, everyone. I want you to imagine, just for a second, paying for this masterclass energy healing session.
Right, like a premium service.
Exactly. You walk into the room, you lie down on the table, and for the next 90 minutes, you feel absolutely nothing.
Wow. Okay. Nothing at all.
Not a single thing. There's no warmth radiating through your muscles, no subtle tingles running down your spine, no profound emotional release, no visions of bright light or anything like that.
Just lying there.
Yeah, it is just an hour and a half of dead air. And yet weeks later, this persistent physical issue that you went in for, it's just gone. You're cured.
That is wild. And honestly, it really challenges how we think about wellness.
It totally does. So have you ever explored those invisible boundaries between physical sensations and holistic healing? Because today we are unpacking a really fascinating primary source.
We are. We're looking at a YouTube presentation by Osman. He's an energy healer, an entrepreneur, and a yoga and meditation teacher.
Right, and he goes by the channel name, the Blind Muslim Yogi.
Yes. And I have to say, the source material is just remarkable. It takes this field that is usually, clouded in vague, subjective mysticism, and it attempts to build a highly structured, almost diagnostic architecture right around it.
Yeah, he is really trying to identify the tangible physical signposts of genuine energy healing. And he has like 50 years of practice behind this.
Which is a massive amount of experience.
Yeah.
And as he mentions, he's been permanently blind since May 2023, so his perspective on sensory input is incredibly unique.
Okay, let's unpack this. Our mission today is to decode those specific symptoms. But to really understand the physical reactions, especially this counterintuitive freezing response he talks about, we have to look at the boundaries he sets around his practice.
That's a great point. He starts his presentation with a disclaimer that kind of shifts the entire dynamic of the conversation.
He does. He doesn't position his work in opposition to modern medicine at all.
No, not at all. He specifically notes that his all-natural therapies are not a replacement for medical treatment. He explicitly advises clients to consult licensed medical practitioners, for their actual conditions.
Which I love. It completely bypasses that adversarial trap that ensnares so much of the wellness industry right now.
It really does. Often, alternative practices define themselves by what they are fighting against, right? Like usually the pharmaceutical industry or conventional hospitals.
Yeah, there's always a bad guy.
Exactly. But Osman carves out a parallel lane. He frames his energy work as complementary. He's dealing with an energetic architecture that runs underneath the physical pathology that your doctors are handling.
It's like a dual system approach. The surgeon fixes the broken pipe, and Osman addresses the water pressure.
That's a great way to put it.
But, that brings us to the first major hurdle in his whole framework. If we accept that there is this secondary, invisible, energetic system, well, we expect to be able to interact with it.
Right. We expect some kind of sensory feedback.
Exactly. Yet Osman states that despite operating at a master level, a certain percentage of his clients experience absolutely zero symptoms in the chair. No energy, no calmness, just nothing.
What's fascinating here is how that challenges the standard medical model, and particularly the consumer wellness mindset. We rely so heavily on symptom tracking and immediate sensory validation.
Oh, for sure. Like if you take a pre-workout supplement, you expect your skin to tingle.
Yeah, or if you use an antiseptic on a cut, you expect it to sting a little. We have this deep-seated psychological bias that equates sensation with efficacy.
But intervention literally has to produce friction for us to believe it's working. We are so addicted to the friction.
We really are. Think about physical therapy. If the muscle isn't burning or if we aren't sore the next day, we just assume we wasted our time.
Right. We carry that exact same physical expectation into mental and realistic spaces. If a meditation session doesn't leave us feeling immediately lighter, we assume we failed. We demand a light show for our time and our money.
And Osman is completely dismantling that expectation because he claims a greater than 90% success rate in actual recovery outcomes completely, regardless of whether the client felt anything during the session.
90% is huge.
It is. But he says it's not extraordinary for this type of healing. He separates the biological or energetic intervention from the client's conscious awareness.
How does he explain that disconnect, though?
Well, he uses the concept of being attuned. Some nervous systems are simply not attuned to perceive the frequency of the work being done. But, and this is key, the lack of conscious perception does not halt the mechanics of the healing.
So the intervention is basically invisible to the user. It is exactly like a smartphone running a background software update while it's just sitting on your nightstand.
Oh, I like that analogy.
Yeah, like the screen is totally black. You don't see the millions of lines of code being rewritten. You don't pick up the phone and feel it getting structurally better in your hand.
No, you're just sleeping through it.
Right. But when you wake up, the bugs are patched and the battery runs more efficiently. The hardware receives the software update entirely outside of your sensory awareness.
Applying that analogy, the client's nervous system is the hardware receiving the patch. The subjective mind simply lacks the administrative privileges, I guess, to read the raw code as it downloads.
That is such an interesting way to think about it. But wait, what about the placebo effect?
Well, that's the thing. If the placebo effect relies almost entirely on the theater of medicine, the white coat, the elaborate ritual, the sensory feedback to trigger self-healing, then this lack of sensation is a fascinating problem.
Because if a client feels nothing, the theater has technically failed.
Exactly. Their expectations are totally unmet, yet the recovery still initiates.
Which suggests the mechanism of action here is operating entirely independently of the client's psychological participation. Like, it's not a belief-driven cure if the person doesn't even believe anything happened in the room.
Precisely. Now, while that zero-symptom group absolutely exists, they're the minority. Over 99% of his clients do feel something.
Right, and Osman points out there is a primary definitive symptom that kicks in for the vast majority, and he calls it a noticeable state of calmness.
We need to examine his specific language here because calm is a highly loaded term.
It really is. Everyone says they want to feel calm.
But he describes this state as permeating and overcoming you, or enveloping you like you're being enveloped by a calmness. And those are entirely active verbs.
Yeah, that's not just chilling out.
Right. He isn't describing the standard reduction of stress. Usually, achieving calm is a subtractive process. You step away from your email, you take a deep breath, you deliberately lower your heart rate.
You are removing stimuli to reach a baseline.
Exactly.
Let me play devil's advocate and push on that, though. If someone pays premium rates to lie in a dimly lit, quiet room for an hour, away from their phone, their kids, and their job, their cortisol is going to drop.
Sure. Biology dictates that.
Naturally, they will feel calm. So how do we differentiate this enveloping calm from just the basic physiological relief of an enforced nap?
That's a very fair question. Osman addresses this by focusing on the acute contrast. He notes this state emphatically wasn't there before the session began, and more importantly, it strikes the attention of the client.
Meaning it's jarring.
Yes. The calm of a nap is passive. You drift into it and your awareness sort of fades. The state Osman describes is the active introduction of a profound stillness that the client consciously recognizes as a foreign presence.
A foreign presence? Wow.
It is the imposition of a high-density quiet right onto the nervous system.
Okay. It's the difference between turning down the volume on your living room TV, which is that subtractive process, and suddenly stepping into an acoustic anechoic chamber.
Oh, that's a perfect comparison.
The quality of that silence is almost aggressive. It feels heavy. It presses against your eardrums because you are experiencing the absolute absence of sound as an actual physical weight.
And that seems to be exactly what he means by enveloping. It wraps around the client from the outside in.
Biologically, how does that even work?
Well, it maps perfectly onto a forced shift into the parasympathetic nervous system. You cannot initiate deep cellular repair or process trauma when the sympathetic nervous system, the fight-or-flight response, is dominating.
Because your body is too busy trying to survive.
Right. The body's resources are diverted to the extremities for survival. By enforcing this heavy, permeating calm, the energetic intervention acts almost like an anesthetic.
It just forcibly shuts down the survival mechanisms.
Exactly, creating a sterile internal environment for the actual reconstructive work to begin.
And doing that kind of deep internal reconstructive work takes time. Which brings us to the logistics of his practice and, frankly, a timeline that a lot of modern consumers might really balk at.
Time is definitely a factor here.
Osman states that his full sessions take a minimum of 90 minutes. And sometimes they even stretch to a 2-hour double session for serious illnesses.
He openly contrasts his method with other healers who claim to work in minutes or even seconds, and he justifies his extended time frame through both clinical necessity and a surprisingly grounded business ethic.
The business side of this is so interesting.
It is. Clinically, he assumes he does not know the full, complex medical and emotional history of the person on the table. To rush a massive influx of energy into an unknown system would just be negligent.
Here's where it gets really interesting to me. Those instant 5-second healings feel like putting a frozen steak in the microwave.
Oh, totally.
You blast it with high-frequency radiation. The surface boils. It might even look cooked on the outside, but the core remains completely frozen solid. The result is just this uneven, shocked system.
And nobody wants a microwave steak.
Exactly. Osman's 90-minute protocol is more like a slow cooker approach. It guarantees the heat or the energy penetrates deeply and evenly, layer by layer, without sending the nervous system into a total crisis.
The term he uses for this is scientific protocol, which I find fascinating. Even within a subtle energy framework, he relies on systematic, repeatable methodology.
He's not just winging it.
Not at all. He operates in a step-by-step engulfment of the body. The extended duration removes the variable of human haste. It allows the body's tissues to gradually acclimate to the energetic shifts.
And what about the ethical side he mentioned?
Right, so ethically, as a self-described entrepreneur, he connects this durational rigor directly to value. He states he wants to ensure the client genuinely gets their money's worth, especially considering his relatively high treatment fees for premium sessions.
Which, I have to point out to you listening right now, that level of transparency is incredibly rare.
It really is.
The wellness space is often saturated with this kind of mystical arrogance where money is treated as this unspiritual afterthought, while practitioners charge astronomical rates for, like, a 10-minute aura sweep.
Oh, absolutely.
But Osman's saying, look, you are paying me for an outcome, and a thorough outcome takes an hour and a half of sustained work, grounds the esoteric practice in the very real mechanics of service delivery.
It also forces the client to commit to the process. Sitting with oneself for 90 minutes is a really daunting task for the modern brain.
Oh, people can't even sit for 5 minutes without checking their phones.
Exactly. And this circles back to why that initial enveloping calm is so vital. Without the forced parasympathetic induction, a client would likely reject the 90-minute protocol. The mind would just rebel against the stillness.
So the client is locked into this heavy enveloping calm. They're lying there for 90 minutes while Osman runs his scientific protocol. This is where we hit the most jarring claim in the entire presentation.
The temperature shift.
Yes. When the body is completely engulfed from head to toe in this healing energy, the definitive physical symptom isn't warmth. It is extreme, shivering cold.
Which is so counterintuitive.
It really is. Osman notes he literally has to keep a spare blanket on hand in the room because clients begin freezing.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this completely subverts our cultural and biological associations with healing. In Western medicine, we associate recovery with heat and increased blood flow.
Yeah, like applying heating pads to muscle spasms.
Right, or a fever, which is the body literally raising its internal thermostat to burn off an invasive pathogen. Warmth is synonymous with vitality.
And coldness is universally associated with shock or stagnation or even systemic failure.
Exactly. Even in parallel energetic practices like Reiki, practitioners almost always describe their hands becoming intensely hot.
Healing hands are always described as warm, so why would the influx of subtle life force energy cause a person to freeze to the point of shivering?
It's a great question.
Taking an endothermic lens to this biological reaction actually makes perfect sense to me. In chemistry, an endothermic reaction absorbs energy from its surrounding environment to facilitate change in state. And that's exactly like an instant ice pack. You snap the pouch, a chemical reaction begins that aggressively pulls in ambient heat, and the pack turns freezing cold.
Applying thermodynamics to subtle anatomy provides a highly plausible mechanical explanation here. If the physical body is undergoing a profound structural or cellular shift based on the energetic code Osman is transmitting, it requires fuel.
It has to power the healing somehow.
Right. It must absorb a massive amount of subtle energy to facilitate the healing. The body pulls this energy inward so rapidly that the physical byproduct is a sudden, dramatic drop in superficial temperature.
So the shivering isn't because the room is cold. The shivering is the physical machinery's mechanical reaction to massive energetic absorption.
That makes a lot of sense.
The core is pulling all available resources inward to process the healing, which leaves the extremities freezing.
Yeah.
Honestly, the detail of the spare blanket is just brilliant.
It's such a grounding detail.
It really is. It strips away all the lofty metaphysical jargon and leaves you with a mundane physical object, a blanket. It proves this isn't just a guided visualization.
Right. The physical body in the physical room is having a stark physiological crisis that requires immediate thermal intervention.
It bridges the metaphysical and the tangible perfectly. Now, this coldness does not just hit the body uniformly all at once, right?
No, it doesn't. Osman describes a specific architecture to how this energy moves. He transmits the energy downwards, usually starting from the head region.
Okay.
Crucially, the energy only reaches the lower extremities, eventually hitting the toes, after breaking through major blockages in the higher energy centers.
The energy travels sequentially. It maps out the body as a vertical system of conduits.
Exactly. If the energy stops at the chest, it doesn't just bypass the chest and jump to the stomach. It physically cannot proceed until the obstacle, whether that's trauma, stagnant energy, a blockage, is dissolved.
So the flow itself becomes the diagnostic tool. It reveals the topography of the client's internal trauma. But there is a really revealing aspect of this process, which is Osman's admission regarding his own limitations.
This is a huge point. He states very clearly, I am not clairvoyant and I do not have clear audience. I'm just an energy healer.
He strips himself of the psychic archetype entirely. He has the tools to pour the energy into the system, but he cannot see through the skin to watch where it goes.
And because he cannot see or hear the subtle energy moving inside the client, the process cannot be passive. He relies entirely on verbal feedback.
So they have to talk during the session.
Yes, he has to ask the client to track the sensation. The client must report when the coldness moves from their chest to their abdomen or when it finally reaches their toes.
It's literally like clearing a clogged plumbing system in a multi-story building.
Oh, I see where you're going with this.
Yeah, imagine Osman is on the roof pouring water into the main vent stack. He knows he's pouring water, but he doesn't know where the pipes are clogged inside the building.
He needs someone on the bottom floor to check the drain.
Exactly. He needs someone to tell him if water is coming out of the basement. If no water is coming out, they both know there is a blockage on floor 3 or maybe floor 4. The energy has to build up immense pressure against that blockage until the obstruction finally gives way.
And waiting for that pressure to build and clear the obstruction sequentially is exactly why the 90-minute protocol is non-negotiable. You cannot rush the physics of fluid dynamics, and apparently you cannot rush the physics of subtle energy either.
But let's look at what this verbal feedback requirement does to the client. It forces a state of acute somatic awareness.
The client has to tune in to their own internal landscape. They have to actively hunt for the feeling of coldness inside their own tissues.
And in doing so, they bring conscious awareness into areas of their body they have likely completely dissociated from.
Oh, absolutely. People often completely disconnect from the physical areas where they hold chronic pain or trauma. It's a coping mechanism.
Right. By forcing the client to become the dashboard, to read their own internal gauges and report back, the act of paying attention becomes a functional tool in the machinery of the healing itself. The observation alters the state of the tissue.
So healing is not something being done to you while you sleep. It is a highly mechanical, collaborative engineering project. You have to locate the blockage, hold the pressure against it, and communicate when the flow resumes.
And Osman teases that once this sequential clearing is complete, once the cold energy finally reaches the toes, the main conduits are clear.
Which is a huge milestone in the session.
Definitely. And he says only then can he move on to the more optimized work, which he actually previews for his next piece on efficient chakra unblocking. He notes that people can find out more about how the system integrates and even check out his free yoga and meditation programs by visiting yogawellness786.com.
So what does this all mean for us? The foundational takeaway here completely upends the traditional view of energy healing as a mystical, instant cure-all. Osman presents a rigorous discipline.
It operates on a distinct timeline, produces profound physiological shifts like extreme cold, and demands active participation from a client who is anchored in a state of forced parasympathetic calm.
It's true energetic mechanics.
So I want to leave you with this thought. Forget the healer and the 90-minute table for a second. If someone were to pour a steady stream of subtle, freezing energy into the top of your head right now, where exactly do you think that flow would hit a wall?
That raises such an important question about our own self-awareness.
It really does. Is there a tight knot in your solar plexus? A numb patch in your lower back? We all carry an invisible architecture of blockages, and sometimes the only way to find them is to finally stop, sit in the quiet, and pay attention to where the flow simply stops moving. Stay curious, and we will see you on the next deep dive.